Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Creative Cow tutorial. And in our ongoing look at learning Avid's Media Composer, we're going to wrap up our look at creating video walls. And in the last few lessons, we looked at creating video walls strictly inside of your Media Composer timeline. Then we took things a little bit different. And what we did was we started out in Avid's Media Composer by getting everything ready. Then what we did is we transferred over and started working in Adobe's After Effects. Well, what about all of you Mac users that switched over from Final Cut Studio and you still have Apple's Motion and you like compositing with it, but you also like editing inside of Avid's Media Composer? So what do you do? Well, in this lesson I'm going to show you how simple it is to get your elements out of Avid's Media Composer and create that video wall inside of Apple's Motion. Okay, short introduction here. Let's just get into Avid's Media Composer and let's get started. Okay, so let's Command and Tab into Avid's Media Composer, and what we're going to do is we're going to need to export our elements. It's not as easy as working inside of Adobe's After Effects where we can simply use Pro Import for After Effects. We're actually going to need to export these elements to work with them inside of Motion 5. So what I'm going to do is navigate over to my sequences bin here, and I'm just going to take sequence number 1 and we're going to take it, we're going to press Home, In, and Out to make sure we have the entire clip marked. We're going to right click and we're going to say export. Now because I have some elements that are AMA linked to, some elements that are actually imported, what we're going to do is we're going to come to Options and we're going to come down to QuickTime Movie. And what we're going to do is we're going to have it as same as source. Actually, I think we're going to need to use custom here because we're not going to be able to use same as source, like I said, because we're using AMA link to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and we're going to choose 1280 by 720, and we're going to leave it as RGB because that's what I imported this footage as. We'll leave the native dimensions as 1280 by 720. I'm going to come up to the format options. What we're going to do is simply come into settings. I'm going to come to the compression type and we're going to come down and choose Avid DNX HD. What I'm going to do is leave the frame rate as current. We're going to leave the depth as millions of colors, not plus because we don't have any alpha channels. We'll leave the colors as RGB. There is no alpha. And the resolution that we're going to use here is 720p 23976 DNX HD 98-bit. I'm simply going to say OK. Now we don't have any sound, and I'm going to turn off Prepare for Internet Streaming. I'm now simply going to say OK. And what we're going to do is we're going to say Save As. We're going to call this DNX HD 720p. Because this is going to be our standard export, and we'll say video only, because that's important to keep in mind as well. I'm going to say OK, I'm going to say save, and you're going to see now that we have that as an option now inside of our export settings. So what I'm going to do is we're simply going to navigate to the desktop. I'm going to create a new folder, and we're going to call this Exports. I'm just going to create that, and we'll call this layer number 1. I'll say save, and you're going to see that what's going to happen is the export is going to be fairly quick for this HD clip. You see about 7 seconds long. Now all I have to do now is simply take sequence number 2, drop it in there. We've already got an in point and an out point marked. I'm going to right click. We're simply going to say export. Use the same export setting. Say save. Now what I could do, actually, if I wanted to, what I'm going to do is just stop that for just 1 second. I'm going to hit Command and period on the Mac, Control and period for all my Windows friends out there, because I want to export both 2 and 3. And most people think that there isn't an export queue or sort of like a render queue inside of Media Composer, or if you're using Pre7 inside of Symphony. But you can actually export multiple things at the same time. All you simply have to do is take your bin, select the export or select the items that you want to export. Now simply right click, come down to export. What we're going to do now is simply just say save. Now you'll see it says save as 3. Well, what's going to happen is it's going to say save as 3, and then it's going to save sequence number 2 as well. It's going to name them whatever we have them named over here inside of our sequences bin. So you'll see again, pretty quick export. There was sequence 3 or segment 3. Here is segment 2. And once it's done, what I'm going to do is simply hit Command and H on the Mac, or you can minimize for all my Windows friends out there. I'm going to come over to Exports. I'm simply going to select the first one, hit the space bar, and there is our footage. Now what's important to keep in mind is that the clip that goes to black is going to be black. You'll remember inside of Adobe's After Effects we actually had that as transparent. Why? Because we had the ability to get in and alter each one of the individual clips because we were linking to them inside of our media folder. In this case, because this is a merged down and flattened QuickTime file, we don't have the same flexibility. So that's something that you're going to need to keep in mind when you're working. If you want to have that gap actually go to nothing, you're going to need to get into a little bit of work inside of Motion. Okay, but I have my 3 elements here, and I'm now actually ready to get into Motion 5 and start creating my video wall. Okay, so let's Command and Tab into Apple's Motion. We're of course always greeted by the project browser, and I'm simply going to select a standard Motion project. And what I also want to do is I want to create a project from a file. This way I can select one of my exported segments or my exported sequences and simply say import as project, and what's going to happen is that Motion is going to create a project based on the parameters of this clip, most importantly the fact that it is 10 seconds long. So let's get in and let's create our video wall. Then I'm going to show you some really funky things that we can do with this video wall. Now, most people might think that maybe they'd want to create individual groups for each one of the clips that I'm going to bring in. We're not going to do that. One group for all 9 of our clips. Okay, so here's clip number 1. What we're going to do is we're going to head on over to the inspector, we're going to come to properties, and I'm going to come over here to scale, and I'm going to set the scale to be about 32, I think. There we go. Now, one thing I love about Motion is the dynamic guides. If you don't have them turned on, come on over here, turn on dynamic guides. Why? Because we can snap to all of our points inside of our sequence. What I'm going to do, simply duplicate this element here. Now it's called one copy. What I'm actually going to do is just rename that 2 just for the purposes of what we're doing. Simply going to slide this right over, snap it to the middle. Now you see we're a little bit small in this clip, so I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to not use 32, I'll just use 33. There we go, much better. Just do the same thing with this clip here, 33. Now I don't mind there being a little bit of a gap in between each one of the elements here that we have. I'm going to duplicate this one more time. Simply just drag it over. Dynamic guides are really taking care of everything. And guess what I have? I have the first row created very quickly and very easily. What I'm going to do is simply duplicate these elements, select them all, Command and D. I'm just going to drag them up here just for organizational purposes. We'll call this number 4. This of course will be number 5. This one of course will be number 6. Again, exactly the same thing. We're simply going to take them, drag them south, snap them right to the middle. Here, let's find where the middle is. There we go. Perfect. You can see we still got a little bit of a gap in between each one here. If I zoom in, it's a little bit hard to see on this element here. There we go. That's better. You can see now if I zoom in, got a little bit of a gap between everything. Looking very nice. Of course, I can always come right up here and say, show me on transparent. There we go. Now, of course, I could get in and futz with this a little bit and make this even with this, but I'm okay with this for right now. So, last, of course, certainly not least, what I'm going to do is just organize everything here. Duplicate, again, drag to the top. Again, this one's going to be number 7, number 8, and of course number 9. Okay, so let's take these last 3 elements, let's put them in place. We know that they're going to snap right down to the corner here. Very cool. And all we're going to do now is simply just change things up a little bit. So let's take, I don't know, number 2, let's take number 3, and we can leave this one as number 1. And I think for this one what we need to do, let's just come back to the beginning here, is we need to have boxing first. There we go. And then I need to have Scenics next. So let's take Scenics. We'll put Scenics in here. Very cool. And we now have our video wall. Now the question is, if I hit play to play this back, take a look at this. This is actually playing back in real time. Video wall, 9 streams of HD, no slowdown. Now of course I'm always asked, Kev, what type of system are you using? Well, I'm using a new iMac, 32 gigs of RAM quad core. So that sort of gives you an idea of the power behind what you're seeing right here. Now, of course, at any time, what I could do if I wanted to, I'm just going to twirl my group up here, and we'll just call this video wall appropriately enough. There we go. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add my super in here. Since we created one before, why don't we create one again? I'll just select my text tool. Of course, we'll type in video walls rock. Of course, bunch of exclamation marks as usual. What I'm going to do is select all the text. I'm going to navigate over again to the inspector. I'm on text right now. What I want to do is simply come right over, and I'm going to choose the font. We're going to use Amazon. There we go, just like we did previously. There we go. I'm just going to adjust the line spacing, bring everything a little bit closer together. Let's come on over to Style. I'm going to add a drop shadow just so this stands out a little bit. Give it a bit of a blur. There we go. And I don't want too much distance here. Let's just back off on the distance here. There we go. Now, of course, I need this text to be much larger. There we go. Now, I could center this up if I wanted to, but I'm not going to for the purposes of what we're doing. Let's just bring this even closer. Of course, I want to come back to Properties. We're just going to adjust its rotation a little bit here, just to swing it out like such. And why don't we throw a behavior on it just to have it animate in? Why not? Now, of course, the video wall is actually inside of that group. I'm going to give it its own group. We'll just call this Video Walls Rock. There we go. Okay, and now all I'm going to do is, I don't even mind if it actually comes in maybe at about the second mark, right about there. Very cool. What I'm going to do, simply select the text. We're going to, of course, come to the library. We're going to come to behaviors. We're going to come down to text animation. It's actually text sequence, sorry. And what we want to do is we want to just have some text basic. And of course, by selecting any one of the behaviors, we can actually come up and play it and take a look and see what it's going to look like. Why don't we just choose the first one? Why not? I'll just simply grab it, drag it, and drop it onto my text. And now, of course, if I come back and I hit play, we now have the text animated in again, real time, no slowdown or anything like that. Very cool. Now, the only thing is I'm thinking that this text needs to be a little bit higher up. Now, of course, while it's playing, I can simply grab it at any time. You'll see as soon as I did that, it took a little bit of a slowdown and then came right back up to real time. Very cool. Okay, now I wanted to show you what I'm going to do just for the purposes of showing this to you. I'm just going to delete my Video Walls Rock text. I wanted to talk just for a second about how we can get in and arrange this video wall, because we've got 9 segments here. Now, of course, what I'm looking at here that I should have done that I didn't do is I didn't actually change up my 1, 2, and 3. So let's do that. Let's have, I believe what we're going to have is we're going to have our time-lapse scenics over here. So let's just come back to the file browser. Let's grab time-lapse scenics, drop it right in there. And you know what? I'm just going to stick boxing in the first one. Why not? It doesn't even really matter how organized it is, just that things are a little bit different. There we go. Now, of course, what we should actually have, since I'm a bit of a perfectionist here, is I should have boxing on the last one, and I should have BMXing right here, so that we're all altered up. Very cool. It's kind of like a game of Sudoku if you think about it. We're just going to delete this marker here. There we go. Now I want to get in, I want to add more monitors in here, kind of like what we did in Adobe's After Effects. Couple ways that I can do this depending on what I need, you know, to do. If I'm just going to be having text over this, but I want to have more video walls, what I can simply do is take this video wall and I'm going to do exactly what I did with the previous element. I'm going to come back over here to the file browser, or pardon me, I'm going to come to the inspector, I'm going to come to scale, and I'm going to set the scale to be 33. Of course, I'm going to position this in the upper left-hand corner. Again, do exactly what I did before. I'm going to duplicate this element. I'm going to drag it right over here into the middle. Duplicate it again. Drag it right over here. Now, in this case, I don't really care if these are the same, because obviously we've got different video walls. Again, select them all. Duplicate. Just position them right up here. Let's actually move them right up to the top. And I'm just going to bring these elements down like such. And again, duplicate again. Bring this up to the top. Bring everything down just like such, and take a look at what I have now. There's no way this is going to play back in real time. Look at that, it actually is. It's actually all playing back in real time. Take a look at this crazy video wall setup that I've got going on. Now, of course, this is if I wanted to stay inside of the frame, the 1280 by 720 frame that I happen to be working on. But what if, let me just select all these other elements except just the one. We're going to take this element, we're going to stick it right back up at 100%. We're just going to reposition it into the middle of the screen. Because remember, what's important to keep in mind is that I can actually zoom back and I can actually duplicate this element and bring it out like such. And then I can duplicate it, both these elements actually. Let's actually duplicate this middle one here again. And what we're going to do is just bring it back this way. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take these 3 elements and we're going to duplicate them and we're going to position them right at the top here. Just like that. And then what we're going to do, just bring everything back up to the top here, is we're going to duplicate everything again and bring it all the way down to the bottom. Now, I wasn't obviously too precise on the side here, but that's okay for the purposes of what we're doing. You can see it's actually this one here. I could just bring that right over like that. Cool. Now, this would obviously be for the purposes of if we wanted to, let's say, let's just group all these together. Okay. I'm simply going to hit Command, Shift, and G to group everything together. And what's important to keep in mind now is that I can actually right-click and say, make this a 3D group. What I'm going to do is come back to Properties, Adjust Rotation. Let's just adjust our Y rotation here. And take a look at that. We now have real 3D space with these elements still being the size that they were when we originally created it. But now we could have these elements moving around in 3D space if we wanted to. So I hope these lessons on creating video walls have shown you how really easy it is to get in, not only create them in your nonlinear editing application, but also to get outside of the walls of your nonlinear editing application, get into a program like After Effects, get into a program like Motion, and use the advantages that you have in there, such as, unlimited X, Y, and Z space to be able to create these huge video walls so they can get in and serve whatever purpose you need them to serve. So if you have any questions, you have any comments, or you have any tutorial requests, you can send them to kevinpmcauliffe@gmail.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.